These kids will be in the world in 2020.
They're going to have to hit the ground running in a way that we never had to.
Our children are competing against children all over the world for occupations and professions.
The world exists as a collaborative venture, and school has to exist as a collaborative venture.
And that's what we need to prepare them for, to work in groups, to problem solve, be critical thinkers, to think out of the box.
It's not just all about academics, it's being able to get along.
Schools really need to be as much about life as life itself. No two students learn the same way.
And they're called modalities of learning. You can learn by listening, you can learn by doing, you can learn by movement, you can learn by doing things with your hands. There's also multiple intelligences.
Musical intelligence, kinesthetic intelligence, spatial intelligence. And so we are all good at something. If you want students to learn, it might be a good idea to connect them to that which they're already very good at.
So if you take a blank sheet of paper and you say, okay, if we were going to design a school that responded to and allow teachers to teach kids in multiple modes, to allow the kids to express themselves in whatever their strength is in terms of how they're hardwired, and give kids skills that they can walk out into the world and they can navigate the 21st century, what would that school look like? Most schools in America today are built the same way they were in 1940. It's a very efficient way of building where you make 700 to 800 square foot rectangles and you line them up along a corridor. And it's known as the cells and bells model because everyone goes in their cell and when the bell rings you move and you go to the next cell. It's designed for one kind of intelligence, listening, and one kind of teaching, lecture.
When we were growing up, the world was a much simpler place. It's an amazingly more complex world in which we live today. Plus, it's a much more connected world. It's a much more global world. So if you were to ask me what is the one difference between yesterday's learning and today's learning, it's that today's learning is about having children be able to think for themselves. So the kind of learning and kind of skills that our students are going to need to be successful citizens of the 21st century will require teachers to change the way they teach.
Our teachers were very confined to the four walls of their classroom. They were trying to create learning spaces to meet the individual needs of our students, to meet different learning styles and teaching styles.
In the case of Middletown, they were bold enough to say, how do we take what we know as educators to be 21st century teaching and learning practices and connect that to space design? And what kinds of environments will allow us to do the things that we know are good for our kids without spending huge amounts of money? Most people don't realize this, but hallways in schools take up sometimes 40% of the entire built areas. So what if you were to be able to recapture that space so that you're getting a better teaching and learning bang for the buck? One opportunity is to create something that we call the small learning community. And the small learning community is a variety of spaces where you can do the direct instruction that you traditionally see happening in a classroom, but from that direct instruction you can go seamlessly from one mode of learning to the other without having to leave your community.
In this case, you have what we call a learning commons. It's a flexible space, very agile, and allows for multiple modes of learning. In this particular place, you have a stage for presentation. The teachers built their own mini library to augment the school library, and kids are allowed to sit around it and sit, in the little cubbies around it and read. There's project tables, there's animals out here, they have different collections. So teachers that are afraid of losing their singular classroom, here they gain an entire learning center.
It's bright, it's open to learning, it's a warm atmosphere, warm colors. The windows bring in just the natural lighting I think just the windows even between the different classrooms, it gives you a visibility of what's going on in the learning center without actually having to go into that classroom to see what's going on. And even the students, they can kind of see what's going on without having to interrupt a teacher.
Each of the teachers here has taken one space and said, okay, this is my home base. And then as the day progresses, almost from the start, the teachers actually circulate through the space, because now the teachers aren't instructors, the teachers are mentors.
And that is a pretty significant change where the student becomes the worker and the teacher becomes the guide.
Each of these teachers obviously has a different strength, so they play on those strengths. So you're getting the best of each person, and it just amplifies the entire learning experience.
At first I questioned this environment, and now I feel it has done my daughter wonders. I questioned how she would be in this environment because she seemed to like intimate environments. But as she got used to it, she's actually thrived on it.
So when we create learning communities, we are just as focused on creating a socially well-adapted child as we are that child be a good learner. In fact, both of them are integrally tied to each other. So this is about social and emotional development as much as it's about academic development.
I think what you see in there is exactly what I hoped we would see when I first heard Prakash make his presentation, that you don't have to build from scratch, that you can take a building, you can modify the inside of it and come up with something that's going to serve the needs of the kids in the 21st century.